Solo Leveling by Gong. Epilogue 3. Beep beep. High school freshman Yunchul Lee had his radar on. It was a new school, a new classroom, and new classmates. Yunchul sat at the back of the class, scanning the environment and its inhabitants. Who would be his underlings, and who would be his friends? With just one look, he quickly made his decisions. The laws of the jungle applied in this classroom. Even in junior high, Yunchul had ruled with his fists. So many of these classmates looked like prey to him. Most of them averted their eyes when they made eye contact with Yunchul. Weaklings. However, one student approached him with a smile. Sungdo Cho. Sungdo was pretty famous in the neighborhood next to his. They had run into each other while out for drinks with other friends. "You're in this school too?" "Yeah." They briefly exchanged news about mutual friends, which disguised a subtle power play. However, aware of Yunchul's notoriety, Sungdo decided to back off quickly. "Let's have a good 3 years." Sungdo extended his arm for a handshake. Yunchul grinned and took his hand. There may be a hierarchy in the classroom, but Yunchul considered Sungdo to be a friend. As Yunchul observed the pecking order of the classroom, one student stood out to him. The student wasn't a teacher's pet sitting at the front of the class, nor was he trying to act tough by lurking at the back of the classroom. He was a weirdo who dared to look Yunchul in the eye as he sat smack dab in the middle of the classroom. There was always a guy like him in the class, some punk who was a little too full of himself and didn't understand his place until something happened to him. The weirdo looked over his shoulder at Yunchul and sighed. Feeling judged, Yunchul couldn't take this sitting down. KRRK. The sound of Yunchul dragging his chair back echoed throughout the classroom, and all eyes swiveled to him. Enjoying the attention, Yunchul cockily approached the punk. "Hey!" But before Yunchul could grab his shoulder, something stopped him from behind. "Hang on!" Yunchul was startled to see Sungdo holding his wrist. "What gives?" The tone of Yunchul's voice made Sungdo swallow nervously. "We went to the same junior high school. Try to leave him alone." "The same junior high school?" Sungdo was protecting this jerk just because they had gone to the same school? There were only two possibilities here. There was some unspeakable reason for not bothering this guy that Yunchul didn't know about, or Yunchul was getting looked down on. Yunchul angrily kicked the chair of the jerk, who was ignoring the commotion. "Who the hell do you think you are? Why don't you say something? Don't you have a mouth?" In a panic, Sungdo stepped forward to try and stop Yunchul. Losing his patience, Yunchul glared at Sungdo and forcefully pushed his hand away. "You, come with me!" Two of his underlings from junior high school followed Yunchul out of the classroom. When he looked back at them from the doorway, he saw Sungdo sweating up a storm, while the other guy remained cool and aloof. The sight enraged Yunchul. "Arg!" Sungdo's face was a mess of bruises as he stumbled back. Yunchul glared daggers at him as he pushed Sungdo against the wall. "Who the hell is that asshole? Why are you trying to protect him?" Sungdo spat saliva mixed with blood onto the ground. He looked exhausted as he raised his head. "He was the strongest guy in our school." Yunchul raised an eyebrow. Had Sungdo lost his mind just because of a few punches? It was a fact that Sungdo and his gang had ruled the schools in his respective neighborhood. Yet Sungdo shook his head for emphasis. "We couldn't even lay a finger on him. I stopped you before you got hurt." Although Yunchul thought Sungdo was talking nonsense, Sungdo looked dead serious. Is he for real? But he hasn't heard so much as a peep about this Suho-sung guy. Yunchul had lived in this area ever since grade school, and he had never heard the name before. Suho looked like a typical nerd, so what could he possibly do to Yunchul? Yunchul was pissed at Sunggo for humiliating him over a guy like that. Smack! Yunchul slapped Sunggo with everything he had. Sunggo's head jerked hard to one side, and his cheek was soon red and swollen. Yunchul had been boxing from a young age, and his arm strength was no joke. However, Sunggo was more afraid of something else. Up until now, Sunggo had been suffering Yunchul's violence in silence. But at that moment, he spotted something in the distance. Seeing Sunggo's eyes widen, Yunchul looked back over his shoulder. The nerd was approaching them in the distance. Sunggo lowered his head, not wanting to make eye contact with Suho, and he mumbled under his breath. Just apologize to him. I'm telling you, listen to me. Are you kidding me? Yunchul grabbed Sunggo by his hair and shook him, but Sunggo kept his mouth shut. Even before Yunchul could yell anything else, Suho was standing right in front of them. Perhaps because of what Sunggo had said earlier, but even though Yunchul would usually punch first, he stepped away from Sunggo and kept a cautious eye on Suho. Suho wasn't short, but he wasn't tall either, especially compared to Yunchul or Sunggo, who were bigger than the average 10th grader. Suho also had an average build. Although the parts of Suho visible outside his school uniform, like his neck and wrists, looked firm, he didn't seem like he practiced martial arts or anything. For this reason, Yunchul wasn't buying what Sunggo had said. Meanwhile, Suho ignored Yunchul as he inspected Sunggo's messed up face. TSK. Suho sucked his teeth out of pity for Sunggo. Sunggo! Yeah. Let's say that you did this, okay? With injuries that bad, you could argue it was in self-defense. Sunggo nodded without any hesitation. Sure. Did what? Yunchul couldn't follow what they were talking about. Hey! He grabbed Suho by the shoulder to turn him around. A light suddenly flashed before Yunchul's eyes. Thud. Yunchul passed out and fell to the ground. At almost the same time, Yunchul's two underlings, who were standing behind him, were knocked out as well. Thud. Thud. What a scary guy. Sunggo was amazed. If it wasn't for his keen vision honed through sports training, he wouldn't have been able to follow Suho's movements. Suho had thrown a punch at Yunchul's face, as well as each of his underlings' weak spots. They were accurate and merciless, like the attack of a wild animal. Sunggo had once picked a fight with Suho, and ended up wondering if his strength was superhuman. After that incident, his school life had become unexpectedly uneventful. Sunggo sighed as he looked at the fallen Yunchul and his gang. Yunchul's nose was broken, and his underlings had fractured bones. Word of the incident had spread quickly. The great Yunchul Lee from XX Junior High was defeated by Sunggo Cho from YY Junior High. Yunchul kept his mouth shut after that, not wanting people to know that he'd gotten knocked unconscious by some random kid. So, with that, another victory had been added to Sunggo's record. He felt quite embarrassed that someone else had handed him the win. While Sunggo was lost in thought, Suho approached him to shake his hand. Considering how things have turned out, let's watch each other's backs in high school too, okay? Sunggo scratched his cheek as he quietly took Suho's hand. Well, it wasn't a bad deal for Sunggo. Wow, did Sunggo really beat those three up? No wonder. From the moment I first saw him, I knew he was tough. I heard he's been studying judo ever since he was little, and was quite famous in his neighborhood. Should I learn judo too? The classroom was abuzz with the news that Yunchul and his gang had been taken to a hospital. Kids began treating Sunggo as a hero because he had fought Yunchul's gang in order to protect a classmate he had gone to junior high with. Although some students still felt awkward with each other since it was the beginning of a new school year, they all had a lot of things to say about the fight. Meanwhile, amid all the chatter, Suho looked out the window in a daze. It was already near the end of the school day, so the sky was turning a warm amber. Suho had to force himself to stifle several yawns. "I'm bored." These days, Suho had much cause for yawning. He was so bored. In the back of his mind, he felt a nostalgic inkling for surprising and exciting things. Whenever he felt this, it made the boredom even more unbearable. SHHP. The classroom back door opened. All the students turned toward it. Sungho entered and went straight to his seat without a word. Oof. Everyone stared sympathetically at Sungho's injured face. Still, Sungho had now dethroned Yunchul as the boss of the classroom. "Hey!" Suho was still focused outside the window when someone poked him in the back. He turned around to face a female classmate. "He's like that because of you. Aren't you gonna thank him?" "I already did." "Oh, okay." The embarrassed girl hastily opened the textbook upon hearing Suho's short reply. Suho returned to looking outside again. So bored. The sun was now setting. It was time to go home. As everyone exited the classroom as fast as they could, Suho was left behind standing in front of a window, looking out at the schoolyard. A steady stream of students left through the school gates. Suho didn't like being in crowds. His mom always told him with a smile that he was just like his dad in that regard. Instead, Suho passed the time by reading a book he had borrowed from the library. When he finally looked up to start heading home, there was no one left in the classroom. Suho took his time packing his bag and slung it over his shoulder. It was good to take his time, but he would be late for dinner at this rate, which would mean he would have to face an angry mom. If things ended there, he would be lucky. But if his dad heard that he made his mom angry... Ugh! I don't want to even imagine it. Suho suddenly had goosebumps. He shook his head. How old would his dad have to be to finally stop being so scary? Suho figured he would never win against him even in his old age. As Suho quivered, he ran toward the closed back door of the classroom. But when he tried to open it, "I can't open the door?" If the door was simply locked, it would at least move, given the amount of force Suho had applied. But the door didn't even move an inch, like he was trying to pull a wall. What's going on? Suho's eyes widened as he ran to the front door of the classroom and grabbed the doorknob. The front door was the same. Surprised, Suho ran to the window and looked outside. An unbelievable scene unfolded before his eyes. The students heading out the gate, the students training in their respective sports teams, the cars on the road, the people on the sidewalks, and even a ball in midair. Everything had stopped moving. How is that possible? Suho struck the window as hard as he could with both fists. Bam! But instead of the windows breaking, his fists bounced back as if the glass was made of rubber. That's when it happened. As he moved away from the window to try and figure things out, Suho spotted a black hole suddenly appear at the back of the classroom. The hole was the size of a volleyball at first, but it kept growing bigger until it was large enough for a person to pass through it. It was a door of darkness that looked like it would suck him in. An ordinary kid would have been scared out of their mind, but Suho placed his hand on his chest instead of crying or screaming. Ba-dump, be a dump, be a dump. His heart was pounding. Maybe Suho had been expecting this kind of thing to happen for some time. Mom did always say I'm just like Dad. What would his dad do in such a situation? He already knew the answer. Ba-dump, be a dump, be a dump. His feet had followed his heart to the front of the gate, so he reached for the surface. BZZT, BZZT. Despite the electric sparks, he felt no pain. Rather, as he stood there, Suho felt relaxed, as if he had returned to his hometown after being away for a long time. He had a funny feeling that he had been in and out of this place before. He slowly took a deep breath. His heart began to calm as his head cleared. It was time. A smile showed on So's face for a moment. Then, without hesitation, he ran inside the gate.